The true history of the Jewish people and their connection to the land of Israel actually dates back over 4,000 years. God gave the land of Israel to Abraham as an everlasting covenant in approximately 2100 BC, saying in the book of Genesis, "I will give to you and your descendants all of the land of Canaan." And he confirmed that covenant through Abraham's son Isaac and Isaac's son Jacob. The exact dimensions of the land are clarified in the book of Exodus, when God says, "I will fix your boundary from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean Sea to the river Euphrates." The children of Israel began conquering part of the Promised Land under Joshua around 1400 BC. Then King David and King Solomon enlarged the size of Israel to its greatest extent ever around 1000 BC. It's true most Jews were exiled from Israel in 587 BC, but they returned home just 70 years later. And centuries after that, Yeshua, the Jewish Messiah, was born in Israel. The Judean state lasted from the 6th century BC until it was eventually destroyed by Rome. After that, from the 2nd century AD to the 16th century, the Holy Land was ruled by Rome. The Byzantines, the Persians, Muslim Umayyads and Abbasids, Crusaders and Mamluks. But there was always a Jewish presence in the Holy Land. Jerusalem was never the capital of any Muslim occupier. The Ottoman Turks conquered and ruled the Holy Land as part of their empire from 1453 to 1917. That is until the Allies in World War I conquered and divided up the Ottoman Empire. Then, the British, under Lord Allenby, conquered Jerusalem in 1917 and received the British mandate to rule the area of the Holy Land. That same year, 1917, the British government in the Balfour Declaration declared the Holy Land would be a homeland for the Jewish people. But in 1922, Britain decided to give 76% of the Holy Land to the Hashemites of Mecca, and the League of Nations confirmed it, thus creating the nation of Transjordan, known today as Jordan. This was a betrayal of Britain's promise to the Jewish people. Then, in 1947, the United Nations voted to divide the rest of the Holy Land, that is, the remaining 24% of the original land promised to the Jews. The UN's plan was to divide the tiny sliver between the Jews and the Arabs. In 1948, the Jewish people accepted the UN decision. But the Arabs rejected it. In fact, the very day the Jews formally accepted the UN offer, 5 Arab nations, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, and Lebanon, attacked the Jews in Israel. When a ceasefire was called, miraculously Israel won the war and actually gained more land than before the Arabs attacked. Again in 1967, the same Arab nations prepared to, quote, throw Israel into the sea. But Israel's preemptive strike saw an Arab defeat, and Israel gained East Jerusalem, the Golan Heights, the West Bank, Gaza, and the Sinai Desert in just 6 days of battle. All of these lands gained were promised to Abraham and his descendants. But in 1982, Israel gave the Sinai Desert to Egypt in return for a peace treaty. Israel also voluntarily evacuated southern Lebanon and Gaza, only to now see Hezbollah and Hamas terrorists take over those territories. Both terrorist groups have just one purpose: to destroy the Jewish nation of Israel. In all this history, there has never been a Palestinian state. The Islamic people believe the Holy Land belongs to them and claim the Jews have never lived here. Today, Israel is a nation of 6 million Jews and 1.6 million Arabs, and is surrounded by over 1.5 billion Muslims. Israel has virtually no natural resources, and is a fraction of the size of nations like the US and the UK. Truly, Israel exists only because God promised this land to Abraham and his descendants. And God has kept his promise.